with an unknown Saiyan and his companion arriving on Earth, further confronting Vegeta and wanting answers and seeking demands from the prince. We last left off with our heroes peacefully going about their lives following the events of Dragon Ball GT involving the Shadow Dragons, as Vegeta now finds himself in a very difficult position as he is now face to face with an individual that had been searching for him for a very long time. And with Vegeta very timid and ready for battle, we find ourselves in the crosshairs of a highly anticipated battle. As once more before we begin, if you are new to this channel and have a love and passion for all things anime and Dragon Ball related, then be sure to go on ahead and smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications by clicking on the bell icon to never miss a single upload. And if you have a love and passion for Dragon Ball, then be sure to go on ahead and slap a big fat like down below by giving this video a big thumbs up as we kick off Malik's remastered Dragon Ball New Age manga chapter number 2 special, with both Vegeta and Rigor staring each other down intensely outside of Capsule Corp. Now, based on the previous chapter, Rigor had come here for a very specific reason, and this reason will soon be revealed as Rigor stares a hole through Vegeta. Vegeta does the same, except Vegeta seems to be very bothered by something as he stares back. And with Bulma and Bra having to step back outside, Bulma goes on to ask, Vegeta, who is that? A friend of yours, Daddy? But Vegeta doesn't say a word. In fact, he is very silent. And with Rigor having to intensely stare back, you can feel the tension in the atmosphere. As only then Rigor goes on to comment, so, it's you. As this catches Vegeta's attention, Rigor proceeds to tell Vegeta, when I heard that planet Vegeta had been destroyed, I had feared that you had perished along with it. But in my heart, somehow, I knew you had survived. And now, it appears that destiny has rewarded my faith. As only then Vegeta goes on to reply to Rigor by telling him, I don't believe I've made your acquaintance. And this really bothers Rigor, as his wife goes on to comment, the prince doesn't remember us. As only then Rigor goes on to states, he may have forgotten us, but I could never forget him. And he has a debt to pay. As Vegeta goes on to reply, a debt? What debt? I don't even know who you are. As Rigor replies, yes you do. We have unresolved history. Do you remember Planet Palm? As Vegeta tries to remember, he goes on to state Planet Palm? With Rigor having to follow up, yes. And the squadron you led for that single mission? The night a lone child stood up to you? Do you remember the one time a subordinate actually struck you? As Vegeta goes on to remember by stating, wait. As we go back to a flashback to when Vegeta was a child, we take a look at Vegeta standing over the body of Rigor with his foot over his face, as Vegeta goes on to tell him, let this be a lesson to you, Prol. You may have strength, but you lack technique and grace. You'll never be my match. Now, you are where you belong. Under my boot. As only then Vegeta thinks back and having to tell Rigor, now I remember. You're that black-tailed brat, the one I put in his place that night. As Rigor goes on to tell him, so, you do remember. As Vegeta goes on to reply, did you come here to settle a childhood spat? All because I beat you decades ago? And this really gets under Rigor's skin, because having to look at this in comparison to the original material, it is so different. As Rigor goes on to reply, that's part of it, but no, you have a life debt, and you will pay it. So there is lots of animosity between Rigor and Vegeta now, as Vegeta goes on to reply, I have no idea what you're on about. What life debt? As only then Rigor is getting even more infuriated as his wife tries to calm him down, which of course he ends up doing, but as soon as he ends up staring out in the distance, he spots Bulma and Bra, and that catches Rigor's attention, because then he goes on to ask Vegeta, that your family back there? As Vegeta overhears this, the first thing he tells Rigor is don't. As only then Rigor goes on to tell him, maybe this will jog your memory, as he sticks his finger out. In milliseconds away from killing both Bulma and Bra, Vegeta swoops on in and telling Rigor, stop! And this surprises Rigor in a very condescending way. As he looks down at Vegeta, he goes on to ask, protecting others? Heh. How unlike you. And this really pisses off Bulma because she goes on to cry out, "Hey!" As she begins to step forward, everyone is quiet. And as Bulma approaches Rigor, she goes on to tell him, "I don't know who you think you are, but you don't come to someone's home and threaten them like that." And as she's getting eerily closer to Rigor, she's standing face to face against him. And right before Bulma is about to smack the ish out of Rigor, immediately we notice how Rigor's wife grabs onto Bulma's hand. And as she does so, she prevents Bulma from touching Rigor, as she goes on to tell Bulma, "Touch my husband and I'll kill you." And I personally really love this because not only do we see and feel the tension on the male side of things, but we also have tension and animosity from the female side of things too. And as she lets go of Bulma's hand, Bra comes running in trying to take Bulma away as Vegeta goes on to tell Rigor, "Alright." He then proceeds to get face to face with Rigor as he proceeds to tell him, "There's a deserted area not far from here. Whatever this is, we settle it there." As Rigor quickly follows by telling him fine. And with Bulma and Bra having to cry out for their father, Vegeta quickly goes on to tell them, "Don't worry, I'll be okay." As Rigor quickly follows up by asking, "Will you?" And this is very dark because you can feel the tension between the two. They have a long childhood rivalry. As Vegeta takes the lead, he takes Rigor and his wife on over to the deserted area. So Vegeta, as he's trying to get them away from the populace in avoiding any collateral damage, meanwhile back on Kame's lookout, Popo and Piccolo are looking down as Popo goes on to tell Piccolo, Popo does not like this. As Piccolo goes on to comment, "Nor do I, old friend. I sense intense malice from that stranger." As Popo then goes on to ask Piccolo, "What do we do?" with Piccolo replying, "Watch for now. Vegeta is the strongest of us besides Son Goku. We'd only get in his way." And with Popo agreeing, we notice how Vegeta, as he's flying off, looks behind him just to verify that Rigor and his wife are still on his trail. As Rigor's wife goes on to ask Rigor, "A family, huh? Can't say I was expecting that. And he tried to protect them? Maybe he's changed." As Rigor gets really mad, he goes on to tell her it doesn't matter. His sins are etched in history, and he's going to pay for what he's done if it's the last thing I do. So even with his wife acknowledging the fact that maybe, just maybe, Vegeta might have changed, Rigor really refuses to let this go. As the narration goes on to state, a few minutes later, Rigor and Vegeta land back down on the ground as Vegeta goes on to state, "Here we are. This should be far enough." And as the two touch down, Vegeta and Rigor once again are staring each other down very intensely. As Vegeta goes on to comment, "Before we start this, tell me your names. I'm not going to keep calling you the black-tailed brat." As Rigor's wife goes on to ask, "Our names? He wants to know our names?" As once again we have another flashback between Rigor and Vegeta, as Rigor goes on to tell Vegeta, "With all due respect, sir, I know this is your first mission with us, but shouldn't you at least try to learn the names of your squad mates?" As Vegeta refuses, he goes on to tell him, "Why should I?" And Rigor gets really mad about this because when he thinks back on how Vegeta should have learned the names of his squad mates, he chose not to. And Rigor's shaking his head as he goes on to tell Vegeta, "Is this some kind of a joke?" As Vegeta points at Rigor, he goes on to tell him, "You would threaten my family in front of me and then question my variancy?" As Rigor proceeds to tell him, "Rigor, and this is Sapari," as the two end up staring each other down very intensely, very quietly after Vegeta and Rigor are slowly getting into fighting position. And as they both do, I can really appreciate the level of detail because once again, this is very different in comparison to the original material we had many years ago. So to see a more calm, collected, seemingly very disgusted Rigor having to confront a very calm yet focused Vegeta is really refreshing. As only then Vegeta goes on to comment, "I should warn you, I'm much stronger than the last time we met. We don't have to." As Rigor cuts him off, he goes on to tell him, "Last time you defeated an unskilled child. We are no longer children. Hold nothing back. When I crush you, I want you to know that there was nothing you could have done to survive." As Vegeta is alarmed by this, he goes on to state, "Don't hold back?" that is a request that you'll be regretting. And I love how Vegeta's focus at that point really shifts as Rigor tells him, if you hold back, you will die. And Vegeta holds nothing back, because the first thing we see Vegeta doing is jumping straight from base form and raising his energy more and more and more until finally his pupils change, his hair changes, at long last jumping from base all the way to Super Saiyan 4. And keep in mind, this is following the events of Dragon Ball GT, so Vegeta had gotten much more powerful since his initial battle against Omega Shenron. And as Vegeta unleashes Super Saiyan 4, the ground is shaking, the landscape is covered in dust and debris. As Rigor looks on, his wife goes on to state, what in the... As Vegeta then goes on to comment, you're not the first to react that way to my power, but it's too late to surrender. As Rigor follows, that's your best? Okay, then allow me to reciprocate. As his wife quickly grabs on, she goes on to tell him, no, you can't do that again, it'll kill you. As Rigor goes on to tell her, don't, I won't need it. As he then proceeds to look back at Vegeta, he goes on to ask his wife, tell me, what's his unit rating? As only then she proceeds to check, as she goes on to tell him, no way, 20 million. As Rigor states 20 million, then, okay, this state will be more than suffice. As Rigor then begins to raise his power level up even more, Vegeta and even Piccolo catch on to this, as Piccolo goes on to state, oh no! As Rigor begins to power up, and I really love the way Malik designed Rigor's facial expression. I really do enjoy the level of intensity here, because it actually reminds me way back when he first did Dragon Ball New Age, as we see Rigor finally transform, and for a split moment in a blinding white light, everything is consumed. Sapari, everyone is gone. As the light of course dissipates, we notice how Rigor had finally transformed. Now we don't know right now as to what Super Saiyan form this is. We can assume it's Super Saiyan 1, Super Saiyan 2, perhaps Super Saiyan 3. As Rigor stares on intensely, the manga chapter comes to a close as the title reads, next chapter, the true Super Saiyan. And I can really appreciate the level of detail behind this, because Malik really did take his time in having to redo his entire story, the original story involving Rigor and Vegeta, which is very different in comparison to what we've seen before in terms of Rigor's motives, his characteristics, his style, his approach, hell, even perhaps his power. But the one thing that I really appreciate from this remastered story is the overall narrative in which Malik is portraying, which I think is a more subtle narrative in having both characters be very cool, calm, and collected, slowly explaining their backstory, slowly seeing how Rigor really has this vendetta against Vegeta in comparison to the original source material where Rigor basically lost his mind, and here he's keeping a much more calm, cool, and collected approach, which I personally really do enjoy. And if you guys don't know who Malik is, you guys can go on ahead and follow him on Twitter and of course his social sites, in which I will leave all his links located down below, as recently Malik was involved in a very horrible situation, which of course now he does need everyone's support, in which I do encourage you guys to head on over and support him and show him some love, and also checking out his Twitch streams to help donate towards the causes in which Malik had recently been involved in. But for manga chapter number 2, I really enjoy the overall direction because it's not too fast, it's not too slow, and it's really immersive when looking at the overall direction he plans on going in once these two end up colliding. But again, I want to get your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. What are your thoughts on Rigor versus Vegeta? Who do you think is going to outbest the other? Do you guys think that perhaps Rigor is going to outclass Vegeta in every conceivable way, or do you think that somehow this is going to be a tie? I want to get your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Once more, if you guys are new to this channel, don't forget to go on ahead and smash that subscribe button and turn on all notifications to never miss a single upload. If of course you guys enjoyed, then be sure to go on ahead and slap a big fat like down below onto this video. Subscribe and check out my secondary channels, guys, at Unreal Network, Unreal Vlogs, and Unreal Royale. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. Tune back in for manga chapter number 3, and I'll be seeing you all down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
This is the Galactic Emperor of the Universe, and of course I'm here to tell you to subscribe to UnrealEntGaming.
Also follow UnrealEntGaming on these social media platforms to stay connected at all times. And if you don't, then very soon you will all be dead! Oh, did someone say UnrealEntGaming? Oh my god.
The fuck's up? Put on some clothes!
Well, why don't you put on any clothes?
What? I don't need clothes, but Jesus Christ, that's huge! What, Broly?
Freezer.
Uh-oh.
Prepare to die!